Hello, PBLers. This is Lindsey Blackburn from PBL Matters, and I have with me today Holly Lavender. She is a teacher in Lancaster Schools in Central Ohio. Holly, thanks for joining us. Tell us more about how you got involved with PBL and what interests you about it.
When I was doing my teacher training like 20 years ago, it was kind of new on the horizon, and it was something I explored a little bit, then had to do a presentation about. So I've always tried to do it. It was more just within the last few years though that I realized that there was more to it than I thought. And so did some reading, and then I attended the workshops there through the ESC that were both very helpful just to try to hone it a little bit.
Very good. And I think that's true in a lot of cases. Teachers have heard of PBL and they've maybe like dipped their toe in or dabbled, and then they go to a workshop and they're like, oh, that's what we were supposed to be doing. And it just helps put the puzzle pieces together. So what workshops were you able to get to?
I did the 201 and then the plunge and a couple of book studies as well.
Cool. The plunge is such a unique offering, right? You just get thrown into a project and you get to experience it like a student did. Did you feel that that was useful for you?
Yes, in fact, that was really my favorite of all of the ones that I have attended. Just my own personal thing that I've noticed about myself over the years as a teacher, the professional development sessions where I would go and experience it as a student, that's where I was most likely to actually use it immediately and to make it part of my instruction. And so when I've led PD, I've tried to keep that in mind as well. There's something about that, and I think it just because for the same reason that PBL is good for our kids and that it's authentic, it's an authentic experience for a teacher to actually go through that process. And it just stuck with me a little bit better.
Great point. So what do you teach and how have you incorporated project-based learning?
I teach, well, any of the physical sciences. This year I'm teaching the 9th grade physical science. I also teach math, Algebra 2 this year. A couple of, I teach engineering, which is an architecture course this time around. And then I teach it's kind of called a quantitative reasoning, which is a math modeling and reasoning course for seniors. So that one has a lot of different projects in it. I am experimenting a little bit right now with both my science and math students that I have for virtual learning. One thing that I have found with my science kids is they're not at the school to do labs, but they have things at home that we can do just really simple experiments with. So we're really focusing on the scientific process through these little mini projects. It's probably more what you would call PBL light, very short, simple, just to try to get them thinking about the process. And then with math, I'm experimenting a little bit. They have really not done PBL very much, the students that I have this year. So they've not done virtual, they've not done PBL. And so I'm just kind of trying to ease it in. So this coming week, I'm going to do a project, which is really kind of a problem project where they're going to look at kind of a business model and try to come up with, well, what's the best way to, it's kind of a linear programming type of a problem, I guess you could say, but what's the best way to order supplies and how much you're going to sell it for and that sort of thing. That's the idea. But we'll see how that goes. This will be the first time we really tried something like that with a virtual class. So we'll see how that goes, but I don't want to just give up on it.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point that, just because you don't have, it's not a full-blown project and you don't have all 7 essential design elements like in full blast at the same time, it still can be project-based learning. And that's something we try to emphasize to folks who come to the training is like, you can incorporate certain elements more than others. So reflection, feedback, public product. And if some of the other elements aren't in that project as much, it's okay. You can do that the next time or focus on something different each quarter. So that's a really good point. You said that you've done some PD I imagine maybe with your colleagues. What's something that you try to emphasize with them when it comes to project-based learning?
So I think just there's more to science than just reading about somebody else doing science. There is a science process that if you're really going to do science, you need to know those skills, which means you need to know how to design an experiment for yourself and to test your own ideas, and not just limited to what you can read in a book. Anybody can do that.
Yeah.
But that's probably, in terms of what I talk about with my colleagues, it would be that.
Is there a memorable project that still sticks with you or you like to share with others?
I had one student who he went all the way to a national competition. He was researching something about like alternative things that had antibiotic properties. And that's one that I still remember. I had another girl who she made a hovercraft and she looked at different factors that affected the hovercraft's flight, things like that. They were pretty in-depth projects that took most of the year, but the process for all of them was the same. It just the topic and was a little different for each kid. So
that's great. We call that voice and choice because you have the backbone of the elements of PBL. Then the students have a choice to work on antibiotic research or hovercrafts or whatever interests them. So that's awesome.
And that's what's nice about science is there's a natural choice built in, even though the process is the same. And it's the process you're really wanting them to learn is how can you test an idea to confirm your thinking or to disaffirm it. So that's what it's all about. So
okay. What advice would you give to school leaders or teachers that have an interest in PBL and want to get going?
I would say for school leaders is really to support the people that are interested. Sometimes those people might be lone wolves in their department and they need to know that somebody cares about what they're doing, and just to back them up, give them an opportunity, show that you appreciate what they're doing and that they are attempting to try to make learning authentic for their students. Give them time, check in on what they're doing, that sort of thing.
What about for teachers?
For teachers, I would say just dive in and give it a try. You might be surprised at what your kids are able to do. I usually am. Sometimes the kids that maybe you didn't expect to do like a really outstanding job on a particular thing, they just really pull through because it just kind of clicked with them. And then you've got that kid. And so just give it a try and not be afraid to feel like it has to be perfect. Like you were saying earlier, it doesn't have to be perfect the first time around, and to give yourself a little grace if things don't go quite as planned.
Yeah.
Which they usually don't.
Agree. What would you say is on the next step of your PBL journey?
One thing that's been a little bit hard, and part of it is just just different constraints that I have on my schedule, to try to really build in the authenticity a little bit more, especially like with maybe some issues that are around town, and getting some of people to come in. Sometimes I have a hard time getting people to come in, especially this year, because of limitations. But that's something that I really think is important that I want to work on, and I know they'll need to work on that a little bit more.
Yeah. I heard from one teacher, and I thought this was very insightful. She said that it's actually been easier to get experts to join in on projects because they can do so from their home or their desk at their office. They don't have to come in and commit that time and that travel. And so they've actually had a multitude of folks volunteer or help out in comparison to in previous years. So maybe that will help a little bit.
Yeah, or even if they can make a recording.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. They could record themselves talking about the question at hand or the issue and send it on to you. And then they wouldn't have to be live, especially if you have multiple class periods, which it sounds like you have several preps. So more power to you. We always ask the same question as our closing question, and it is, why PBL?
Student engagement. Not every kid learns the same way. And I think that just the world's changing a little bit, and that sounds a little bit cliche, I know, but it is. And when in my previous position with the department, I had an opportunity to be on a phone call with some executives from some different companies, and we asked them, what are you looking for in people that you hire? And they all said the same thing. Even though they're from very different industries, they're looking for people who can problem solve. And that's where you learn that sort of thing, is a student has to be put in that position where they have had to figure out something on their own, and not just from me showing them. Mm-hmm. And I think that PBL is a really good avenue for that. And so it just seems like that is becoming more and more important for students to be able to do. And so we need to give them the opportunities to do that. So for PBL, it just seems like it really ties everything together, and they can kind of see, well, why do I need to know this? And so for some of those kids that might be a little bit on the outskirts of being engaged, it can sometimes pull them
in. Two of your responses, you've said something that's resonated with us, and that's the phrase PBL is for all learners. Mm-hmm. You said students you might not expect to do well, and then your answer to why PBL hit on that again. So that's something we try to emphasize here too. Any closing thoughts for us, Holly?
I would just say, give it a try, and give yourself grace if it doesn't go perfectly the first time around. I know it certainly hasn't for me. And just keep at it. The book studies, I have really appreciated the book studies and the opportunities to that the ESC had put together to have like a cohort of people who are interested in PBL to meet every so often. Just hearing from other people and getting some ideas. I would say if you're thinking about it at all, just to explore some of those opportunities that are out there, because just hearing from another person, I got a lot of ideas that way. So
yeah. Teachers love exchanging ideas with other teachers, that is for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. I know it's a crazy time of year with everything that's going on, and we appreciate you giving your insights.